Hello everyone, and welcome to the class guide for the new elite specialization, the Antiquary. Thieves get quite an interesting elite specialization with a lot to go over. So, without further ado, we're going to start with the profession mechanic, and this is known as Skritt Swipe. You'll summon a Skritt to pilfer artifacts from the targeted enemy. And the way this works, we're actually going to go to the traits section first, because it's the most easiest way of understanding what they all are. And we're also going to go over to the weapon skills because they are also laid out here. But essentially, the way this works is that this is a swipe that can be used without a target, so you can just use this out in the open world as well, which is actually a really nice touch. So you'll use this and you'll get 2 artifacts. The left slot will always be offensive, and the right slot will always be defensive. And you have 4 offensive and 4 defensive artifacts that you could possibly draw from. We will talk about the offensive ones first, the defensive ones. We have Summon Cryptus Turret, which will summon a turret in a location and fire out a bunch of projectiles. We actually pulled this here so we can show it off. But there are no enemies for the projectiles to launch towards, but just to give you a little bit of an idea. The next offensive you could possibly get is the Forged Surfer Dash, which will send you dashing in a location, dropping bombs. But also to note, they also come with additional buffs, which is kind of new. To go back quickly, the Cryptus Turret will allow you to strike additional damage onto enemies that are struck by the Cryptus Turret. The Surfer Dash will have you dropping bombs around your player character for 10 seconds. The Legion Guitar is a multi-attack hit which ends in a stun, then gives you the buff which allows you to be using your stealth attack while not in stealth for 10 seconds. But it gives you 3 stacks. You get 3 uses of this over the course of 10 seconds. If you don't use them in 10 seconds, this buff does drop. But it's really fun. A very interesting idea for a non-stealth stealth attack. And then finally, for the offensive ones, we have Mist Burn Mortar. Shoot an orb that explodes upon impact, and then it will just deal damage and burning enemies. This will give you a buff, which will also cause your strikes to deal additional burning damage. Now for the defensive ones. Your first one is Chalk Shield. This will create a bubble around you, it'll deal damage, and it will block incoming missiles. Additionally, your weapon skills that cost initiative will refund all of their initiative. So it gives you basically 3 uses of stronger initiative skills. Your Exalted Hammer will have you leap at a location and heal upon striking. This will also give you a buff whenever you use an active weapon skill that costs initiative. It will create an additional burst of healing, so more upkeep. Zephyrite Crystal will have, this will be a multiple charged effect, which will have you dashing at a location, which is pretty nice. The buff for this is for 10 seconds while you draw it. You can use the Zephyrite Sun Crystal again. Once this effect drops, if you haven't used the Zephyrite Sun Crystal, you'll just get 1 use out of it. But the moment you pull it, you can spam this for up to 10 seconds. And then finally, for your final defensive, you have the Hollow Dancer Decoy. This will summon a Skritt Hollow Dancer in a location. We'll see what we get here. Not the dancer, but it's pretty cool. The Hollow Dancer will taunt enemies, and then if it's not killed, it will explode, dealing damage. The next utility skill you use has a reduced cooldown as well, which is pretty strong. So those are all of the possible artifacts. We get some of them playing here on screen. I will also be cycling these with gameplay in the background, so you can hopefully see a good amount of them. But I really love this. The Antiquary is focused on RNG. You have a sense of luck when it comes to this class in terms of the different effects that you're getting. However, they are all fairly strong, with strong passive buffs. So no matter what you get, most of the time you're still going to have some use out of it. Now there are niche scenarios where you are maybe hoping for one particular effect, but the F1 ability does come off cooldown pretty quickly, especially with certain traits that you can take for Core Thief. And you only get 1 use of these. I am taking the trait Improvisation, which allows me to use multiple stolen skills. So if I don't have this equipped, I only get 1 access of the artifact abilities, so I'll have to be more mindful. but I want to touch on the utility skills because that is maybe where you're going to be thinking about next. Now, the utility skills are really cool. They're double-edged skills. They all have their initial use, and these are actually able to be used when they're currently recharging on their cooldown, but it comes with a risk of a backfire. Backfires tend to do some negative effect to you, but also to enemies around you. Be very mindful of when you are trying to test your luck with double dipping a skill before it's fully on cooldown. But this sentiment is not the case for the healing skill, so scrap everything that I just said for the healing skill because you actually want it to backfire if you're looking for a stronger heal. So the way this works is it gives you a minor heal first and removes a condition, but the backfire for it will give you a much stronger heal and a much stronger removal of conditions. Do be mindful of this skill. Sometimes you'll have to pop it multiple times, as even though you might use it when it's just started its cooldown, your luck might be incredible and might not incur another backfire. So just do be careful and maybe monitor what the cooldown is. If it's still only around 10 seconds, you might not have gotten the bigger heal effect. Next, we'll talk about Stone Summit Cannon. This will summon a Skritt to fire a cannon in a location. The backfire's chance is to have it summon onto you, and then it will explode, dealing damage and burning to yourself. But it will also damage enemies around it as well. So it's never like completely terrible to backfire it, but it's just something that you can also have control over to dodge out of if you don't want to get hit with that damage. Next, we have Emergency Jade Shield. This will break stuns and give you a barrier. The backfire is pretty damaging to yourself, though. It will destroy the barrier and also damage you as well. If you chain this back to back, the damage to your health is not as significant. But if you pop this, the initial barrier is then depleted, and then you pop it again, you won't have that initial barrier to soften the blow of the actual effect. So we can see there, it does chunk more of my health than the initial cast when I initially backfired it. So just be mindful that this is your shielding ability, but might be a self-damaging ability if you're not too careful with it. Next is very interesting. It's Canuck Coins. Canuck Coins, each coin will give you initiative based off of the heads or the tails. Heads will give you 2 initiative, tails will give you 1. Also, heads will convert a condition into a boon. The tails will just remove a condition. So it's quite a nice supportive ability to bolster up your initiative resources in terms of using your weapon abilities to deal some bigger hits. If it backfires, which it did not backfire, if it backfires, it will instead remove boons from you if it's a heads. And if it's a tails, it will convert boons into conditions while not giving you any initiative. One thing to note that it will still give you initiative if you're able to get heads on the backfire. But if your luck is really bad and you get all tails, oof, I got 1 tails. So I would not have gained initiative for that, and I would have instead converted one of my boons that I had if I was in a fight into a condition. So just something to keep track of and be mindful of, but I really do like Canuck Coins. And then finally we have Inquest Portal Device. Inquest Portal Device is a teleport to a target, but it could have a chance of backfiring where you will teleport and damage your enemy target, but you will be prone and be knocked down for 2 seconds. And then finally we have Skritt Scuffle. This will summon a field of Skritt to always be cycling your artifacts, so you can use these quite often. It does give you a chance of gaining the unstable Skritt Bomb, which explodes you and damages yourself. So that's the backfire potential for that ability. It won't always pop up during the duration of this elite. So you might get lucky and not have to deal with the Skritt Bomb. So just be mindful, as the Skritt Bomb will pop up in both the offensive and defensive slots, I think. So it is a little bit more of a risky play. When you're using this, always keep track of where that bomb is placed on your F2 or F3. Now let's talk about the traits for the Antiquary. We'll talk about the minors first. We have Magpie's Defense. Grant yourself barrier when you use a healing or elite skill. You might have noticed this when I used my healing ability, which is an additional reason why Anti-Venom Drought can be used as a good maintenance heal rather than a burst heal, because not only are you gaining that flat healing, but also additional barrier to hopefully allow your allies to heal you up for any missing health as well, so it's quite nice. It is on a 20-second cooldown, so just be mindful of that. And then we have Enterprising Aristocrat. Gain initiative whenever you use an artifact skill. So whenever you use one of these, you will gain some initiative back, which then feeds into this gameplay loop of artifact, weapon skills, artifact, weapon skills. This spec is really focused on chaining your artifacts into your weapon skills to gain a lot of damage. We have Card Swap. Gain access to the Reshuffle skill and remove conditions from yourself whenever you reshuffle your artifacts or use an artifact skill. So Reshuffle is a nice way for you to gain access to some more Condi cleanse, but give you a little bit more on-demand, like, oh, I don't like the setup, or it's not really for my taste, so we'll hit the Reshuffle. Gives you another selection of it if you would like. Repeat Ransacker. Reduce the recharge of Skritt Swipe whenever you use an artifact. So this will mean that your actual F1 ability will recharge faster to allow you to use it again. See, it's chunking down a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to use it. And then finally we have Prolific Plunderer. Gain an additional artifact slot. Whenever you pilfer, you gain an additional random artifact. You can use one additional artifact when you pilfer with Skritt Swipe. If you take this and also Improvisation, you're now able to use all 3 artifacts without having to sacrifice any of them. Your F4 will be either offensive or defensive, so that is a little vestige of randomness that is lingering from the betas where it's not something set in stone, but you'll always get your offensive and your defensive. If you take Prolific Plunderer, you'll gain a random one. I love running Prolific Plunderer and Improvisation because you get so many artifacts to choose from for any given situation. Next, we have Scoundrel's Luck. Gain Scoundrel's Luck whenever you use an artifact. Scoundrel's Luck allows you to use double-edged skills on cooldown without backfiring. So we can see this here. I'll use an artifact and I gain the buff for 10 seconds, which means I can double up on any of my desired utility effects without incurring its cooldown or its backfire skill. So let's see if this actually works with the Jade Shield. So pop this. I'm now going to gain a barrier. I'm going to gain another barrier, but it doesn't actually stack my barrier. That's really strange and very peculiar. Scoundrel's Luck. I don't know if it's because it's not... I wonder how this ability is coded, because this does not actually stack barrier. That is so strange. It might stack the stun break, but it's not actually stacking the barrier at all. Huh. Anyways, but it would allow you to negate any of that backfire from your utility skills. So we can use this into another one, and we're good. Perfect. Next we have Meticulous Custodian. Your artifacts have increased effectiveness, and beneficial artifacts effects last longer and have increased charges. So this just makes all of your artifacts a lot more powerful. So if you are into using your artifacts, kind of like I am with these builds, you might want to take this to have all of these more potent, to have them stronger, to have their buffs last longer. They're just quite nice to have if you're more artifact focused. But if you're not wanting to be more artifact focused with all these button presses, you might want to go more of the passive route with something like Exhilarating Ephemera. Gain increased damage for a period of time after using an artifact. This is something that can be stacked up twice to 20 seconds in total duration, a double duration of 15% damage. It's just a damage increase trait, which is quite simplistic, but quite potent for Antiquary when you are considering one of their grandmasters that you can double up on. Next we have Prodigious Pincher. You will pilfer after using a certain amount of initiative. This trait will override any existing artifacts when triggered. So this has to be in combat, but essentially anytime that you're using 15 initiative, you'll get another selection of artifact abilities to use. Next we have your boon trait, your keystone capstone trait. This is Possessive Hoarder. Artifacts grant barrier and boons to allies when used. Offensive and defensive artifacts grant different boons. So your F2 slot will grant Alacrity and Might, and your F3 slot will grant Regeneration and Protection. And then finally, we have Combat High. Gain Combat High when you use Skritt Swipe, increasing your outgoing strike and condition damage. You'll lose stacks of combat high every interval. Now this one is very different than some of the other traits in the game, where it starts you off with the buff at a much higher threshold than something where you build it up over time. You'll start with the full 30% increased damage and condition damage when you use your Skritt swipe. So you can use Skritt swipe into your artifact ability to then gain Exhilarating Ephemera. You'll gain both of these, so this is a plus 15% increased damage, and at the highest amounts for combat high, this is a plus 30% increased damage. So stacking these two give you just flat out incredible, impressive damage modifiers. And as for a build that I've really enjoyed running, I have been enjoying Deadly Arts, Trickery, and Antiquary. Taking Dagger, and also Staff while doing more Berserker, Marauder, or Valkyrie stats, whatever one you want. If you want to go Glass Cannon or you want some more sustain, go for it. But Deadly Arts, I'm taking Dagger Training, Even the Odds, Improvisation. Trickery, I'm taking Thrill of the Crime, Bountiful Theft, and Sleight of Hand. And then for the Antiquary, I've really been enjoying Prolific Plunderer to gain access to all of my artifacts. And because I'm so artifact focused, I've been taking Meticulous Custodian, just because I've enjoyed playing around with the buffs for the artifacts themselves. And then I have been swapping around between Combat High, just for the incredible damage output, Possessive Hoarder if the timing calls for it, and then sometimes I'll take Prodigious Pincher. ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2 has made a fantastic new class, a fantastic new fantasy that I don't see too often in like RPG and MMOs. So I am very, very happy with what has come of the Antiquary. It is incredibly fun to play and somewhat intuitive if you kind of get the hang of it. I'm not gonna lie, it can feel a little overwhelming depending on the types of traits that you take in terms of your abilities as well. So just be mindful. And there are also times where you think that you won't incur a backfire and you'll be at like 1 second left of a cooldown and you'll cause a backfire. Conversely, you'll be at like 25 seconds left on a cooldown and you'll use it and then you won't incur a backfire. So it really is the luck of the draw, which is always really fun to me at least. So if you like luck and you like playing around with chance, I would recommend playing the Antiquary. But thank you all for coming on by and watching this class guide on the Antiquary. If you would like to purchase Visions of Eternity, I have links in my description. Thank you so very much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all over on Twitch as well on the weekends. Streaming there. So I'll see you guys in the next class guide video. Bye everyone. Mwah.